The world died quietly, not in fire, but in the slow suffocation of its own creation. Above the poisoned earth, cities of steel float like ghosts, relics of humanity's arrogance, clinging to the skies that no longer belong to them. Beneath the rotting underbelly of one such city, a scavenger named Kael hunts for fragments of the past, broken circuits, shattered dreams, whispers of a world long gone. He doesn't believe in salvation, only in survival. But when a secret buried deep within the city's foundations begins to stir, Kael finds himself drawn into a fight he never asked for, a rebellion against a tyrant who rules from the clouds, and a truth that could shatter what remains of civilization. Under the iron skies, the lines between hope and despair blur. The air hums with rebellion, the steel trembles with the weight of lies, and every heartbeat is a countdown to collapse. The storm is coming, and when it breaks, the sky itself will burn. The sharp wind bit through the layers of patchwork scavenger gear Kael wore, carrying with it the acrid scent of burnt circuitry and decay. He moved cautiously over the jagged remains of a sky platform that had long since surrendered to rust and rot, metal beams twisted into grotesque sculptures by the relentless ravages of time and neglect. Above him, the sky was a churn of heavy gray clouds, swollen with the promise of a coming storm. Distant thunder rumbled low, a steady drumbeat against the fragile heartbeat of the city. Kael's eyes, dark and restless, flicked across the ruined landscape. The outskirts of the floating metropolis were a maze of broken tech and shattered dreams, remnants of a civilization clinging desperately to the skies above a poisoned earth. The towering iron giants that sustained the city groaned faintly in the toxic breeze, their structural integrity compromised by years of environmental decay and the careless machinations of those in power. His boots crunched over shards of glass and splintered metal as he searched for anything of value, scraps of circuitry, fragments of power cells, anything that could be repurposed or traded. Survival demanded resourcefulness, and Kael had learned to read the signs of collapse like a second language. The flicker of failing neon signs, the distant hum of malfunctioning generators, the sudden silence where life should have thrived, all whispered warnings. The city itself was a labyrinth of contradictions. Above, gleaming spires pierced the sky, their glass facades reflecting the sickly orange glow of the polluted horizon. Below, in the lower echelons where Kael scavenged, shadows lengthened over alleyways cluttered with refuse and the skeletal remains of derelict drones. The disparity was stark, a physical manifestation of the political tension simmering just beneath the surface. As Kael crept through a narrow passage framed by rusted girders, he caught sight of movement ahead. A squad of sky guards, their sleek black uniforms stark against the mottled steel and grime, patrolled the area. Their helmets gleamed under the flickering lights, visors reflecting the neon glow with an unsettling, impersonal sheen. Their voices were low but sharp, questioning a scrawny scavenger caught with stolen tech. The man's eyes darted nervously, sweat beading on his brow despite the chill. Kael froze behind a broken wall, heart pounding, as he waited for the guards to pass. The tension in the air was palpable, a fragile thread stretched taut by fear and suspicion. These enforcers of Governor Ralvik's regime were a constant reminder that freedom here was a fragile illusion, maintained by force and intimidation. Once the patrol moved on, Kael pressed forward, the weight of countless eyes feeling heavy on his back. He paused briefly atop a rusted beam, the city sprawling beneath him like a broken jewel suspended in a poisoned sky. The horizon shimmered with unstable energy fields, faint cracks of light tracing the outlines of the floating structures, as if the very fabric of reality was fraying at the edges. The distant thunder grew louder, echoing through the hollow spaces between the towers, a grim portent of the turmoil to come. Kael's thoughts drifted to the rumors whispered in shadowed corners, the impending collapse of the iron giants, the secrets buried beneath the toxic soil, and the growing unrest among the oppressed. He exhaled slowly, the mist of his breath mingling with the sour air. Despite the despair etched into every corner of this fractured world, a spark of determination flickered within him. Survival was not just about scavenging parts or evading patrols. It was about uncovering the truth and fighting for a future beyond the rust and ruin. The storm was coming, and with it, a reckoning that would test every shred of hope Kael had left. But for now, he moved forward, shadows stretching long behind him as the iron skies darkened. The city's fragile dance of decay and defiance had begun anew, and Kael was caught in its relentless tide. The lower levels of the floating city were a world apart from the gleaming spires above. Here, the air was thick with the smell of rust and burnt circuitry, and the distant hum of failing engines echoed like ghostly whispers. Kael moved carefully, his boots crunching over shattered glass and twisted metal on the skeletal remains of an old sky platform. The sun was sinking, tinting the horizon a deep blood red that seemed to bleed into the poisoned clouds circling the city like vultures. He crouched beside a fractured console, fingers deftly probing the exposed circuits. Years of scavenging had sharpened his instincts. He could spot salvageable components where others saw only wreckage. The platform groaned beneath him, a reminder that the city itself was slowly dying. Every creak and shudder sent a shiver down his spine, not just from the cold. Memories crept unbidden into his mind, shadows of a past he tried to keep locked away. The sky raid that had stolen his family, the screams over the radio, the desperate scramble for safety. He closed his eyes briefly, breathing in the stale air, steeling himself against the ache. Survival demanded focus. A faint clatter caught his attention. Kael's hand moved to the knife at his belt as he scanned the horizon. Figures emerged from the smoke and rubble, sky raiders, their patched leather armor gleaming faintly in the dying light. Their leader, a tall brute with a jagged scar slicing through his cheek, spotted Kael and bellowed orders. Kael's heart pounded as he darted between rusted beams, the raiders in close pursuit. Gunfire cracked, and sparks flew as a raider's blade met Kael's knife. He twisted, parried, and pushed forward, adrenaline sharpening every sense. The platform's edge loomed ahead, a deadly drop into the swirling mists below. In a desperate gamble, Kael leapt onto a broken walkway, the metal groaning underfoot. Behind him, the raiders hesitated, snarling in frustration. Seizing the moment, Kael sprinted toward a narrow gap in the city's lower sectors, slipping through just as the raiders regrouped. Breath ragged, he ducked into a shadowed alley where a figure waited, a woman with short-cropped red hair and grime-streaked clothes. She eyed him warily, hands resting on the grip of a compact energy pistol. "You're lucky to be alive," she said, voice low but firm. Kael nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "You're Lyra," she gave a curt nod. "Rebel pilot and mechanic, and you're the scavenger everyone's been whispering about." They fell into step, moving through the maze of lower city streets. As they walked, Lyra's fierce gaze softened slightly. "Lost someone in the raids?" Kael's jaw tightened. "Family." Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. "Same here. The city's rulers let it happen, and now they tighten their grip. We're not just fighting raiders, we're fighting them." Their uneasy alliance was forged in shared pain and a mutual hunger for change. Lyra led Kael to a hidden workshop cluttered with scavenged tech and maps of the city's vulnerable points. Their plans were quietly being made to challenge the status quo. The night deepened as they talked, plans, fears, fragments of hope piecing together like the broken city around them. Outside, the distant rumble of the city's groaning steel underscored their fragile existence. Storm clouds gathered, dark and heavy, threatening to drown the last light. Kael's thoughts drifted to the sky raids to come, the battles looming on the horizon. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of something more than survival, hope. It was fragile, like the city itself, but it was enough to keep him moving forward. As they parted ways, Lyra's voice held a warning and a promise. "We'll need every ally we can get. The fight's just beginning." Kael watched her disappear into the shadows, the weight of the city pressing down on him. The fragments of the fallen were many, but from their ruins, something new might yet rise. The iron skies above might be crumbling, but beneath them, a rebellion was stirring. And Kael was at its heart. The wind shifted, carrying with it the distant howl of approaching engines. Another raid, another test of their resolve. The night was far from over, and the fight for survival had only just begun. The city's metallic heart throbbed beneath Kael's feet, a restless beast of iron and steel suspended high above the poisoned earth. Overhead, the sky was a dull, sickly gray, thick with the residue of long-forgotten fires and chemical clouds. The distant clatter of machinery echoed through the labyrinthine corridors, a constant reminder of the fragile balance that held the floating metropolis aloft. Kael's boots clanged softly against the rusted grating as he moved with practiced caution, shadowed by Lyra's determined stride beside him. "Keep your voice low," Lyra whispered, her eyes sharp beneath the hood of her grease-stained jacket. Her red hair, cropped short for practicality, caught the faint glimmer of the flickering lights as they slipped deeper into the restricted zone. "Ralvik's propaganda is ringing through every speaker. They want us scared, divided." Kael nodded, his gaze flickering toward a nearby loudspeaker mounted high on a twisted steel beam. The governor's voice boomed across the city, smooth and commanding, layered with the synthetic clarity of reinforced broadcasts. "Citizens of the floating city, stability is our shield against chaos. Trust in the order we provide. Any dissent threatens the lives we protect." The words rang hollow to Kael's ears. Beneath the polished surfaces and soaring towers, the city was crumbling. He could feel it in the tremors beneath his feet, in the leaking steam that hissed through cracks in the piping, in the whispered rumors of failing life support systems and disappearing resources. As they slipped past a cluster of security drones patrolling the corridor, Kael's heart hammered against his ribs. The air was thick with the scent of burnt oil and something metallic, sharp and acrid. Ahead, the passage opened into a vast chamber where faded control panels blinked erratically, screens flickering with static and indecipherable code. Lyra crouched beside an access terminal, her fingers dancing over the brittle keys with practiced ease. "If we can get through the firewall, we might find proof of what's really going on," she murmured. Her breath came in short bursts, a mixture of adrenaline and cold. Kael kept watch, eyes darting between the shadows where patrols could appear at any moment. The tension knotted in his stomach as the terminal resisted their intrusion, encrypted layers peeling away one by one under Lyra's deft hacking. Suddenly, the screen stabilized, revealing a cascade of internal reports marked confidential and urgent. "Look at this," Lyra said, voice barely above a whisper. "Reports of system failures, suppressed maintenance logs, warnings ignored. Someone doesn't want this information to get out." Kael scanned the data, noting technical jargon that masked a grim reality. The city's infrastructure was failing, with critical systems on the brink of collapse. The elite rulers, cloaked in their propaganda, were hiding the truth from the masses, preserving a fragile illusion of control. A distant clang echoed through the chamber, and Kael's pulse quickened. "We need to move," he urged. "We've stayed too long." They slipped back into the shadows, the oppressive hum of machinery following them like a sinister chorus. Outside, the city sprawled beneath the iron skies, a patchwork of light and shadow, hope and despair. Kael's mind raced with the knowledge they had uncovered, the growing gulf between the rulers and the oppressed. "This isn't just about survival," Lyra said quietly as they vanished into the maze. "It's about who gets to decide the future." Kael's jaw tightened. The whispers in the iron were growing louder, and the fragile peace was unraveling. The time for hiding was ending. The city was listening, and soon so would the world. But as they disappeared into the labyrinth, a cold voice crackled over a nearby speaker. "Be warned, traitors and insurgents. Governor Ralvik's justice is swift and absolute." Kael's eyes met Lyra's, a silent vow passing between them. The fight was just beginning. The narrow corridor was thick with the stale scent of dust and rust, the metallic groan of the floating city echoing faintly above. Kael moved cautiously, his boots stirring up motes of debris that danced in the weak light filtering through cracked vents. The scavenger's eyes, sharp and wary, scanned the shadows as he followed the faint hum of machinery deeper into the labyrinth beneath the city's steel bones. The entrance to the hidden laboratory was nearly obscured by a rusted panel, its edges corroded and peeling. Kael brushed aside the remnants of a discarded tarp and pressed his hand against the cold metal. A faint click and a low hiss signaled the door's reluctant opening. Inside, the air was colder, tinged with the sterile chill of forgotten technology. Flickering monitors lined the walls, their screens sputtering with fragmented data and the ghostly glow of half-erased schematics. Scattered papers littered the floor, some stained with smudged ink, others brittle with age. The hum of a power source, irregular yet persistent, pulsed like a heartbeat within the room. From the shadows emerged a figure, thin and pale, his glasses catching the dim light as he stepped forward. Iran's eyes, sharp and calculating, met Kael's with a guarded intensity. "I didn't expect anyone else to find this place," he murmured, voice low yet steady. "Especially not someone from the upper levels." Kael shifted uneasily. "I'm no friend of the elite," he replied, "but I need answers." Iran nodded, gesturing toward a cluttered console. "The answers you seek are buried deep, beneath layers of lies and silence. What I have here is only a fragment, the truth they tried to erase." With a flick of his wrist, Iran activated a holographic projector. Ethereal blue light bathed the room, casting shifting images of soil samples marked with toxic readings and faded documents detailing experimental protocols. The display revealed disturbing data. The Earth's poisoning was not an accident, but the consequence of deliberate, unethical experiments carried out under the city ruler's watchful eyes. Kael leaned closer, his breath shallow. "They knew," he whispered, "and they let it happen?" Iran's gaze darkened. "More than that, they covered it up, manipulated the truth to maintain control. The floating cities were never meant to be permanent sanctuaries. They were a last-ditch effort to escape the consequences of their own actions." A sudden tremor shook the floor beneath them, sending a shiver through the metal framework. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, and the distant rumble of shifting structures reminded them of the precariousness of their refuge. Kael's hand instinctively moved to the makeshift weapon at his side. "We don't have much time," Iran said, urgency creeping into his voice. "Governor Ralvik's forces are tightening their grip. They'll come looking for anyone who dares to uncover the past." Kael's jaw clenched. "Then we have to move quickly. If the people above knew what was hidden beneath their feet, maybe they'd fight back. Maybe we could change the course of this dying world." The two men began to seal the laboratory's entrance, barricading it with scavenged scrap and activating silent alarms that only they could detect. In the dim glow of the holograms, plans were drawn, risks assessed, and alliances forged, not out of trust, but necessity. Despite the weight of despair settled over the poisoned earth, a fragile spark of hope flickered between them. Beneath the iron skies and the shattered floating cities, the truth awaited its reckoning. Kael glanced once more at the holographic images before they dimmed, a silent vow etched into his mind: to unveil the buried past, no matter the cost. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but for the first time in years, he felt the stirrings of something more powerful than survival: purpose. As the distant thunder rolled across the sky, the hidden laboratory fell into an uneasy silence, the echoes of forbidden knowledge reverberating through the steel and shadows. The metallic groan of the floating city's outer platforms was barely audible beneath the distant rumble of engines slicing through the thick, polluted air. Kael crouched low amid the twisted remnants of what had once been a cargo crane, his gaze fixed on the horizon, where the sky blurred into a haze of ash and cloud. Beside him, Lyra's short-cropped red hair caught the occasional flicker of dying sunlight, her eyes scanning the approaching silhouettes with a practiced intensity. "They're coming," Lyra murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, though the urgency was unmistakable. Kael nodded, tightening his grip on the salvaged pulse rifle pressed against his side. The convoy was due to pass through this sector any moment now, carrying the supplies the rebels desperately needed to sustain their fragile resistance. But out here, in the shadows of the city's decaying underbelly, danger was a constant companion. A sudden shriek tore through the air, sharp and chilling. Kael's heart lurched as the first of Jax's raiders appeared over the jagged skyline, sleek, brutal aircraft adorned with jagged insignias and bristling with weaponry. The sky erupted into chaos as alarms blared, the convoy's hovercraft scrambling to mount a defense. Explosions blossomed like dark flowers against the gray, poisoned sky. Kael cursed under his breath, adrenaline surging as he grabbed Lyra's arm. "We need to move now." They sprinted across the rickety metal walkways, the sounds of gunfire and shouting growing louder behind them. Tracer rounds zipped past, some tearing into the rusted surfaces around them with sparks and shrieks. Kael ducked behind a stack of shipping containers just as a nearby platform exploded, sending a shower of debris raining down. Breathing hard, Lyra peered over the edge, eyes narrowing. "The convoy's falling apart. We've got to warn the others." Kael shook his head. "Too late for that. We need to survive first." They sprinted again, weaving through the skeletal remains of the city's infrastructure. The pursuit was relentless. Raider fighters swooped down, their engines roaring like angry beasts. Kael's pulse hammered in his ears as he fired bursts at a pursuing craft, forcing it to veer off with a sputtering explosion. "This way," Lyra beckoned, leading him toward a narrow skyrail barely wide enough for one person. They clambered aboard, the platform rattling underfoot as it swung precariously over the void. Below, the convoy was obliterated. Kael caught glimpses of burning transport pods plummeting toward the earth, the fires casting a hellish glow on the poisoned clouds. The loss was staggering, the supplies gone in moments, devoured by the merciless raiders. As they reached a safer distance, Kael and Lyra paused, chests heaving. The distant roar of Sky Raider engines faded slowly, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed down like a weight. "They're getting bolder," Lyra said grimly. "If we don't strike back, there won't be anything left to fight for." Kael's mind raced. The rebels were fractured, stretched thin across the floating city's crumbling expanse. Yet giving in to fear was not an option. "We need to regroup, gather what's left, and plan." Later, in the dim glow of the rebel hideout, the air thick with the smell of oil and sweat, Kael and Lyra convened with others. Maps were spread, fingers tracing possible ambush points and escape routes. Voices were low but urgent, each person acutely aware that their survival depended on unity and swift action. "Jax isn't just a raider," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the tension. "He's a symbol of everything wrong with this world, lawless, ruthless, and hungry. We need to be smarter, faster." Kael met her gaze, his own resolve hardening. "Then we'll make sure he regrets crossing us." Outside, the iron skies darkened with gathering storm clouds, ominous, relentless. The war for survival was only just beginning, and every shadow held the threat of death. But beneath the iron skies, amidst the ruins of a broken world, a spark of rebellion kindled, fragile, fierce, and unyielding. As the chapter closed, Kael's thoughts lingered on the horizon, where darkness and danger intertwined. The next move would be crucial, and failure was no longer an option.